I came back late Sunday night, the kind of tired where even silence hums. My suitcase wheels thudded unevenly on the floor as I dragged them over the threshold, not bothering to turn on any lights. I knew this place blindfolded. Or at least I thought I did. The kitchen welcomed me with its usual chill. It always held onto cold longer than the rest of the apartment. I tossed my keys toward the ceramic bowl on the counter. They missed, clattered against the tile, and skidded under the fridge. That's when I saw it. That's when I noticed the hallway light, glowing even though I'd cut the power last week. Not the overhead in the living room, not the kitchen sconce that flickered now and then. The hallway, a single bulb above the narrow passage leading to the bedrooms, glowing faintly yellow like it had been on for hours and was tired of being looked at. I don't use that light. Haven't in months. It's too dim to be helpful and too central to feel accidental. I don't even remember the last time I touched its switch. But there it was, lit, quietly, calmly. I stood still for a moment, suitcase handle in one hand, the other brushing the edge of the counter. I waited for something to make sense. A delayed memory, maybe. A flash of logic. But nothing came. So I walked slowly toward the hallway, dragging the suitcase behind me. The light hummed, not audibly, not really, but in a way I could feel, like it was remembering something I wasn't. The switch was in the off position. I stood there blinking at it, then flicked it downward, off, and the bulb flickered once before staying lit. I flicked it upward, then back. Same result. The light stayed on. Faulty wiring, I whispered to no one, and I don't know why I whispered. Maybe the glow asked me to. I left the suitcase in the hall and walked into my bedroom. Everything looked normal. Made bed, shut window. A light film of dust on the dresser that said no one had touched anything. Still, I opened the closet. Nothing. I bent and looked under the bed. Empty. I felt ridiculous, but also not. That's the worst part. The not ridiculous part. I went back into the hallway, the light still on. I pulled the chain directly from the fixture, thinking maybe the wall switch wasn't the only control. Nothing changed. I stood under it and stared up. It wasn't bright enough to hurt, but I squinted anyway. The ceiling around the bulb looked slightly darker than I remembered. Or maybe the light made it look that way. Eventually, I went into the living room and sat down. I didn't unpack. I didn't even take off my shoes. I just sat, watching the hallway. The bulb didn't flicker, didn't buzz, just glowed softly, as if it were waiting. At midnight, I turned on the TV just for noise, kept the volume low, talk shows and fake laughter, no one really listening. But I still looked toward the hallway every few minutes, waiting for something to shift. Once, the corner of my vision caught movement, like a shadow ducking away just before I turned. But the space was empty. At 1:17 a.m., I turned off the TV and tried to sleep. Lying in bed, I could see the edge of the hallway through my door. The glow seeped in like a slow leak, brushing against the carpet. No shadows moved, no sounds creaked, but I couldn't close my eyes. My mind kept circling the switch. Why off? Why still glowing? I eventually got up, walked barefoot to the hallway again, and stood under the light. I stared at it until my neck ached. Then I did something stupid. I reached up. I don't know what I expected. Maybe to feel heat from the bulb. Maybe a draft. Maybe static in the air like before storm. But I didn't feel anything. I just held my hand up under it and waited. The silence around me wasn't right. It didn't breathe. It listened. I let my hand drop and walked back to my room. I closed the door this time. Something about the light felt observant, not active, just aware. I lay back in bed and faced the wall. The glow still seeped in under the door. Eventually, sleep found me, but only in patches. I dreamed I was standing in my hallway, but the walls were too long. The hallway stretched forever, the light above growing smaller and smaller the farther I walked, and behind me, somewhere out of sight, was the sound of breath. Not my own. I woke up sweating. The digital clock said 3:38 a.m. And then I heard it, the sound of footsteps. Not heavy, not threatening, just slow, steady, bare feet on hardwood, coming from the hallway. I froze, my mouth dry, every inch of me tense and trying not to breathe. The steps stopped outside my door. And then, nothing. Minutes passed. I don't know how many. Eventually, I sat up and pressed my ear to the door. No sound. I opened it. The hallway was empty. The light still on, still softly glowing, still watching. I turned it off again, the switch, even knowing it wouldn't matter. I pressed the switch harder than necessary, just to feel in control. And this time, the bulb flickered, then dimmed, then went dark. I stood there. Stillness settled, and just as I exhaled and turned toward the bedroom again, something made me pause. A faint sound, not footsteps, breathing, coming from inside the guest room. I hadn't opened that door. I slowly reached for the guest room handle, unsure if I was opening a door or answering something that had already arrived. My hand hovered, unsure if it wanted contact or closure. The door was closed, not locked. I never kept it locked. But it felt sealed, not by mechanics, but by memory. I turned the knob anyway. It gave easily. The door creaked open, and I paused, letting the faint glow from the hallway spill across the floor. Nothing moved. The guest room was still. Too still. It smelled faintly of lavender, the way I always left it, just in case anyone ever visited. No one had. The bed was untouched, pillows neat, dresser closed, window latched, everything perfectly still. But that wasn't what made my chest tighten. It was the air, thick, heavy, used. I stepped in slowly, letting my eyes adjust. The temperature was off. A few degrees colder, like it hadn't belonged to the rest of the apartment. No signs of anyone. Nothing out of place. No footprints. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling I had just missed something. Like someone had left seconds before I arrived. I checked the closet. Empty. I lifted the bed skirt. Nothing. I even stood still for a full minute. Eyes closed. Just listening. Silence. I left the room and pulled the door shut behind me. Not slammed. Not locked. Just gently shut. Then I turned off the hallway light. It stayed off. I slept that night with my bedroom door open and a chair propped under the handle. I'm not sure why. Maybe it made me feel responsible, like I'd done my part. But I didn't sleep deeply. In the morning, sunlight filtered through my blinds like nothing had happened. No signs of anything unusual. No out-of-place objects, no shifted furniture. The hallway bulb still dark. It would have been easy to convince myself I'd imagined it all. That exhaustion had warped the night into something heavier than it was. But I didn't believe myself. Instead of making coffee, I opened my laptop and pulled up the security feed. I had installed a camera system after my car got broken into last year. One above the front door, one in the living room, angled toward the hallway, and a motion-detecting mic feed near the kitchen. I wasn't expecting to find anything. I told myself it was just to confirm the ordinary. But something deeper in me, quieter and more honest, hoped I was wrong. The footage was normal through Thursday, just a flicker from the fridge light when it auto-defrosted. Shadows moving as clouds passed outside. Friday was normal too, until 2:37 a.m. I was already on the road by then. I had left for my trip just after midnight. But at 2:37, the front door camera picked up something. Not movement, audio. The mic kicked in from what it logged as irregular tonal pattern. I pressed play. Soft footsteps. At first, I thought maybe it was someone in the hallway outside. I lived on the 3rd floor of a quiet building, so not impossible. But these footsteps didn't fade in or out. They started inside, just there, as if they'd always been. 4 steps, then a pause, then 3 more, a long silence, then 2. My heart began to race. I turned up the volume and leaned in. They weren't hurried, they weren't heavy, just thoughtful, precise. And they echoed slightly like bare feet on wood. I switched to the living room camera. At 2:38 a.m., the hallway light turned on. I stared at the screen, waiting to see motion. Nothing. The bulb flickered into life on its own. No figure, no shadow, just sudden light. I scrubbed the timeline forward, frame by frame. The hallway stayed lit. No one walked through. Nothing crossed the camera's path. And then, at 2:44:51, the audio mic in the kitchen kicked in again. Breathing, quiet, close, shaky. I stared at the waveform. It pulsed slow, irregular, like whoever was breathing didn't want to be caught, but couldn't stop. It lasted 18 seconds. Then it cut. I didn't know what I was feeling. A knot of confusion, fear, something else I didn't have a name for. My palms were sweating. I switched to the bedroom camera, only to remember I didn't have one. I'd always thought it would be intrusive. I didn't want to watch myself sleep. Now I wished I had. I sat back in the chair, the hallway light flickering on loop in my head. It didn't feel like a haunting, not in the theatrical sense. No objects flying, no voices in the night. It felt intentional. Someone had been here, and they had moved like they belonged. I opened my calendar to double-check my trip dates. I had left on Friday, yes. I remembered locking the door, double-checking windows, even unplugging unnecessary devices. But now I wondered, had I missed something? Had I closed the guest room window? I clicked into my email, searched for my smart lock logs. It should have recorded the door opening, but nothing. No entry, no exit, no activity between Friday and Sunday. Whoever, whatever, had walked those steps didn't come through the front. I closed the laptop slowly. It wasn't a ghost. I would have preferred it to be one. At least ghosts followed rules. At least they made sense within their own madness. This felt like someone trying to rewrite the shape of my home. Quietly, patiently. Someone that knew how I lived. Someone who wanted to feel what it felt like to be me. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I didn't leave the apartment. I didn't clean. I just watched, listened, waited. Nothing happened, but nothing felt right. Every room held an echo, a question. And that night, when I turned off all the lights, something odd flickered on the edge of the hallway camera. Not movement, just a darker dark. Not a shadow, but the shape left behind by one. And again, Soft footsteps, slower this time, not moving away, coming back. The hallway light never came on that night, but somehow I knew it didn't need to anymore. By morning, the apartment had the stillness of something holding its breath. I moved quietly, as if the walls might wake. Coffee didn't help. Showers didn't cleanse the sense of watching. Something had settled here, and it didn't need the light to see. I sat down at my desk and opened the security footage again. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just searching for silence that made more sense. The timestamp read Saturday, 1:12 p.m. I had been away then, 200 miles out, walking by a lake and thinking about nothing. The feed loaded slow. My internet had started dragging, like the apartment didn't want me to look. Then the footage played. The front door opened, calmly, smoothly, and I walked in. Same coat, same black boots, same canvas tote slung low on my shoulder. I didn't look at the camera. I didn't pause. I stepped inside like I belonged. Because I do. I did. But I wasn't there. I was far away that afternoon. I had the photos to prove it, the receipt from the cafe, the text thread from a friend, and yet, there I was, on screen, closing my door without sound. I hit pause. My hand hovered over the mouse, not sure whether to rewind or delete. Instead, I zoomed in. The image pixelated slightly, but enough detail remained to make my stomach clench. It wasn't just my coat. It was the same scarf I had packed in my suitcase, the same chipped keychain on the bag, the same lazy curve in my posture. I pressed play again. The figure walked past the camera toward the hallway. No hesitation. No wrong turn. I knew where everything was. There wasn't a single unfamiliar gesture. At 1:15, the hallway camera picked her up. She turned on the hallway light, paused beneath it, looked down the corridor, then entered the guest room. I stared. The door closed behind her, and that was it. No exit recorded, no second door opening, no movement for the rest of the day. The footage ended at midnight, overwritten by newer recordings from Sunday. I sat there for a long time, not moving, not breathing deeply, just watching a frozen screen. I had been home, without being home. And the worst part, she hadn't done anything strange, nothing threatening, no breaking, no damage. She just lived. She moved through my space the way I did when I was tired. Deliberate, but soft. She didn't need to rummage through drawers or look around. She already knew where everything was. It didn't feel like being stalked. It felt like being replaced. I opened my suitcase. My scarf was missing. So was the tote. I called my friend, the one I'd been with on Saturday, and asked if I'd used either. She said no. She remembered me saying I'd left the tote behind, that I didn't want to carry anything that day, but they weren't here now. I searched everywhere, closets, drawers, even under the bed. Gone. It felt deliberate. I checked the footage again, looked at the way I walked. There was something subtle. Office, the timing between steps was too even. The arms didn't swing. The coat didn't move like cloth. It flowed too smoothly, like part of a painting. She wasn't wearing me. She was learning how to be me. That thought sat in my chest like wet cotton. I couldn't cough it out, couldn't swallow it down. The day dragged. I didn't leave the apartment. I barely moved. And sometime around 5 p.m., I noticed something new. The guest room door was open. I hadn't touched it. I I had shut it the night before, gently, deliberately. Now it sat slightly ajar, just enough for the light to bend around its edge, just enough to be noticed. I stood in the hallway, staring at it. I didn't reach for the handle this time. I didn't want to. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket and started recording. I pushed the door open, empty, just like before. Same lavender scent, same neat bed, same untouched surfaces, except for one thing. On the pillow was my scarf, folded, perfectly centered, and underneath it, my keychain. The tote was nowhere in sight. I didn't move closer. I didn't touch anything. I backed out of the room, closed the door, and locked it with a spare latch I hadn't used in years. And then I unplugged the hallway camera. If she wanted to walk through my space, I wouldn't give her the performance. But I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, listening to the quiet, counting the spaces between creaks, waiting for footsteps, waiting for a lock to click, waiting for myself to come home again. I never heard a sound. But in the morning, the scarf was gone, and the camera was plugged back in. That day, I stopped watching the footage because I was afraid I'd catch myself waving back. I thought distance might dilute the wrongness, so I left. Packed a small overnight bag, locked every door twice, and drove east toward the next town. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I needed a version of myself that couldn't be found. I stayed in a cheap motel just off the highway, the kind of place where the lights flicker even when they're new, where the walls are too thin to hide anything, where forgetting who you are feels easier. It worked, for a night. But Sunday morning, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number, local. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Then I answered. "Hi," a man said, breathless. "I'm downstairs. You didn't answer the buzzer." My stomach curled inward. "I think you have the wrong number," I said. A pause. "You're not apartment 3B, he asked. "I am," I said carefully, "but I'm not home." Another pause, shorter, sharper. "But you just opened the door," he said. "I handed it to you." I blinked. Handed what? The package, the order. He sounded annoyed now, like I was playing dumb. I didn't order anything. Well, someone did. Same name, first and last, same number, same unit, and you opened the door. I stood there, suddenly unsure how solid the floor was beneath me. What did she look like? Silence, then softer. She looked like you. That sentence shouldn't have chilled me, but it did. Because he didn't mean she looked similar to you. He meant she was you. "What was in the package?" I asked. He shuffled, paper rustling. Small box. Didn't open it, just said fragile and deliver immediately. That's all. Did she say anything? He exhaled. Just, "Thank you." Smiled. Real polite, like she knew me. I hung up without another word. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, phone still in hand, cold bleeding into my palm. She was answering the door now, using my name, taking deliveries I never requested. What was she ordering, and why did she need it now? I packed my things without thinking, threw them in the car, and drove back without stopping. The city felt smaller as I approached, my neighborhood tighter, more watchful, as if I were returning to something I had already left too many times. I parked across the street instead of a usual spot, sat in the car, watched my own building for 20 minutes. Nothing moved. Eventually, I went inside. The hallway light was off. The air smelled faintly of citrus, not my usual detergent. I stepped softly up the stairs, listening for any sound from my unit. Silence. I unlocked the door. Everything looked normal. The couch, the keys in the bowl. Even the hallway light switch was still in the off position. But something was different. It felt used. I checked the guest room, still locked, still undisturbed. The scarf and keychain hadn't returned. I moved to the kitchen, and there it was, sitting on the counter, a small white box, fragile, no label now, but the packing tape was fresh. I didn't open it right away. I circled it twice, then leaned in. The tape had been cut and resealed, carefully, no knife marks, no fingerprints. I picked it up, light, maybe a pound, at most. I peeled the tape, slow. Inside, a glass jar, sealed, filled with something that shimmered slightly, like powdered light, iridescent, shifting. Beneath it, a folded slip of paper. No branding, just words. For her. That's all it said, not for me. For her. I resealed the box, placed it on the windowsill, and stepped away. That night, I turned on all the lights, even the hallway one. I slept with a knife under my pillow, knowing it wouldn't help. Around 3:12 a.m., I heard a noise. A soft knock. Not on the front door, on the guest room door. I sat up, held my breath, listened. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, then silence. I didn't move, didn't call anyone, just waited. Eventually, the hallway bulb flickered. It didn't turn on. It flickered, like it wanted to but wasn't allowed. And then, it stopped. I stayed in bed until morning. When I checked the guest room, the lock was still in place, unbroken. But the white box was gone from the window. Only a small circle of dust remained, like something had stood there, waiting to be picked up. I didn't call the delivery man back, didn't report it. What would I say? My duplicate picked up her glowing jar of God knows what, left no trace, and knows the shape of my life better than I do. There were no crimes, no fingerprints, no proof, just her, circling closer. That afternoon, I called a locksmith. He came around 5, changed every deadbolt, added a second one to the front door. He was quick, efficient, didn't ask questions. But just as he was leaving, he looked over his shoulder and said, "You know you already had this lock model on before, right?" I blinked. "No, I didn't. This is new." He frowned. "You sure?" Because this exact bolt, brand, make, even the serial stamp, was already here. Same setup, same anchor points. I thought I was just swapping out identical hardware. I didn't respond, just nodded slowly and thanked him. He left, and I sat down, watching the hallway light once again. I had changed the locks to keep her out. But what if she wasn't trying to get in? What if she was trying to keep me from leaving? That thought festered longer than I expected. It made everything else blur. Meals went half-eaten. Lights stayed on too long. Sleep came late, in shallow drips. I told myself to be normal. That's what people do after something strange. Pretend the air is clean. I vacuumed. I opened windows. I lit candles with scents that promised control. Cinnamon, linen, cedarwood. But there was something wrong with the hallway. The drawer, the narrow one beneath the intercom, wedged between the wall and the coat closet. It had always been there, always stuck. The kind of drawer that groaned even when you weren't touching it. I never used it, never needed to. But today, walking past with my mug in hand, I saw it. Open. Barely. An inch. A breath. I stopped. It hadn't been like that last night. I was sure. I would have noticed. would have bumped it maybe. But now it sat crooked, just enough to be deliberate. I set the mug down, approached slowly. The drawer was heavier than I remembered. I pulled it with care, expecting dust, receipts, maybe nothing. But inside was a folded paper, a list, in my handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before touching it. The letters were mine. Same rhythm, same pressure. But I didn't remember writing it. Didn't even remember owning this kind of paper. Off-white, fibrous, notepaper from nowhere. The list had times, just that. 10:12 p.m., 2:44 a.m., 3:12 a.m., 4:07 a.m. Each time was circled. Next to them, just one word, listen. Below that, a name I didn't recognize, Eleanor. I read it again, Eleanor. I said it aloud. It didn't feel like a name I'd ever spoken, but it fit in my mouth like I had. It lingered on my tongue longer than it should have. And below the paper, at the bottom of the drawer, was a key. Tiny, rusted, heavy, old. It looked ancient in the way objects do when they've waited too long for a hand. It didn't belong to anything I owned, not the mailbox, not the storage unit, not even the apartment door. I picked it up. It left a smudge of orange in my palm, as if it had already begun dissolving. I checked the back of the drawer. No secret compartment, no note tucked inside the lining, just the list, the name, and the key. I brought them into the kitchen, set them on the table, and stared for a while. I kept rereading the word listen. It didn't say look, didn't say remember. It said listen. So I did. That night I turned off the TV, sat still in the hallway. Lights dimmed, phone face down. 10:12 p.m. came, nothing. Then, a soft creak. Not the floor, not the walls, the intercom. It buzzed once. No voice, no call, just static. I pressed the button. No one answered. The red light blinked once, then died. At 2:44 a.m., I sat up in bed. No sound. But outside my window, a street lamp flickered, in rhythm. 3 pulses, then darkness. I got up, looked out. No cars, no footsteps, just a shape, standing still across the street. Not moving, not staring, just there. By 3:12 a.m., it was gone. At 4:07, the hallway drawer creaked open again, by itself. I didn't approach it this time. I just watched. And in the morning, the key was gone. The list remained. I flipped it over, blank. I stared at the name again. Eleanor. Why did it haunt me more than any of the events? I searched my emails, my texts, my photos, nothing. I checked old letters, rent documents, even the registry of tenants in the building. No Eleanor. But the feeling lingered, like the word wasn't someone else's name, but something I had forgotten was once mine. I dug through boxes, old journals, anything that might remind me. Then I found it. A library card, dated 6 years ago, issued to my address. Name, Eleanor Gray. My handwriting, my signature. But I had never been Eleanor. Had I? I turned the card over, a number, handwritten in pen, the same as the old keys etching. A faint cereal, nearly rubbed away. I sat down slowly. What had I forgotten? Or worse, what had been removed? The idea that someone had rewritten my past, layer by layer, until I no longer recognized myself. It felt right. It felt too right. That night I waited again, but the drawer never opened. The intercom never buzzed. The street lamp didn't flicker. Everything stayed still. Too still. And in the morning, the list was gone. Just the empty drawer again. And on the kitchen counter, right where I'd left my mug, was the key. But this time it was warm, like someone had just placed it there. I thought the drawer was the beginning, but maybe it was just where she kept returning to rest. I hadn't told anyone what was happening, not fully. How could I? Every piece sounded plausible until you strung them together. Then it unraveled into silence. That long, heavy kind of silence that makes people look at you instead of listen. But then my phone buzzed. It was Harper, my closest friend since college. The kind of person who knew how I laughed before I did. We hadn't spoken since Thursday. I hadn't had the strength to explain the cracks forming beneath my floorboards. Her message was short. Hey, weird question. What did you mean by your message yesterday? I stared at it for a long time. The words didn't make sense. I hadn't texted her. I scrolled through my messages. The last thing from me was Thursday. A photo of an old bookshelf I thought she'd like. She'd hearted it and replied with a thumbs up. No other messages. Not from me. I typed, I didn't send anything yesterday. Her typing dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. A second later, she sent a screenshot. It was from my number. Timestamp, Saturday, 2:03 p.m. Content, you always asked what I'd do if I disappeared. You'll see soon. My chest tightened. It didn't sound like me. Not just in tone, in intent, cold, calculated, almost performative. I read it 3 times. The words pressed against something I had buried a long time ago. You'll see soon. I hadn't used that phrase in years. Not since before the accident. Not since Eleanor. I sent her another message. Harper, please. Did you reply? A moment passed. Then I said, what are you talking about? And you just hearted it. I didn't. I never did. The feeling I had in the hallway when the drawer opened itself, this was worse. This was mobile. It meant she could reach out now, speak through me, act through me, breathe even, like she belonged in my skin. And she knew Harper, or at least, she knew who mattered to me. I opened my phone settings, checked my sent messages, nothing unusual. Then I noticed something odd in the battery stats. My screen time log said I'd been using the phone at 2:03 p.m. Saturday, active, messaging. But I was asleep at the time. I remembered because I'd woken up with my phone under the pillow, warm, as if someone else had held it longer than I had. Back then, I'd blamed a bad dream. Now I wasn't sure it was mine. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened the screenshot again. Looked at the phrasing. You always ask what I'd do if I disappeared. She knew our inside jokes. Knew Harper's anxious way of always needing reassurance. Knew the kind of sentence that would worry her. But not enough to call the police. It was calculated. I dialed Harper. She picked up after one ring. Hey, are you okay? You're kind of freaking me out. I didn't send that. A pause. Then who did? I didn't answer. After a moment, I asked, did it feel like me? The message. She hesitated. The way it was typed, yes, but not the why. It felt off, like you weren't telling me something. I wasn't, I whispered. I asked if she still had the voicemail I left her after the accident 2 years ago. The last time I'd used that phrase. You'll see soon. She said yes. She saved it because it scared her. Said I sounded like someone else. Not angry, just emptied out. That phrase had been the last thing I said before vanishing for 3 days. No one knew where I'd gone, not even me. I hung up and opened the voicemail. Archived, there it was, time-stamped 2 years ago. My voice, grainy, hollow. "I'm not running," the voice said. "I'm just stepping outside. You'll see soon." I played it 3 times. By the 4th, something changed. On the 3rd replay, the voice at the end didn't match mine. Not fully. It had the same rhythm, but it curled differently at the edges, like someone mimicking me through glass. It ended with a breath that didn't sound like breathing. I turned off the phone and stared out the window. What if this wasn't new? What if she had always been borrowing time? Just once, here and there, sliding into hours I'd never remember, saying things I wouldn't recall, planting phrases I'd later forget. Maybe I wasn't being replaced. Maybe I was being hollowed out. Slowly, subtly, borrowed until nothing real was left. The lights in the hallway dimmed for a moment. Not out, just low, like something passed between the circuits, brushing too close. I stepped into the hallway. The drawer was open again. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed. It said, "You're remembering too fast." No signature, no timestamp. I reached for it, but before I touched it, I felt something brush past my ankle. A whisper of movement, like a cat with no body. I stepped back, left the note there, returned to my room, locked the door. I didn't sleep. At 2:03 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Message from my number, just 2 words. "She's ready." I didn't reply, but the typing dots appeared anyway, as if she didn't need me to say yes. After that night, the quiet changed. It wasn't softer, it was fuller, like it had grown limbs. I could feel it in the way the apartment held sound, the way footsteps on the floor didn't echo back the same anymore. Something about the acoustics had shifted, as if the space had been rebuilt while I slept. The refrigerator made a noise I couldn't place. Not a hum, not a rattle. A low rhythmic pulse, like something breathing in static. I stood in front of it one morning, hand on the handle, not opening it, just listening, waiting for the sound to sync with my heartbeat. It didn't. That same day, I saw Mrs. Klein from across the hall. She used to greet me every time I passed her door. A sweet old woman with brittle hands and loud slippers. This time, she froze when I stepped out. Her mouth twitched like she wanted to say something. Then she just shook her head and went back inside. The door clicked shut, locked, latched. She never looked me in the eyes. By evening, the apartment felt tighter, smaller in a way I couldn't explain. The corners looked sharper, the shadows more honest. The mirror in the bathroom, once fogged and warm, now refused to blur. It was like it was watching me. I leaned in close that night, toothbrush half raised, and noticed something strange. The mirror didn't reflect me moving immediately. There was the slightest delay, not enough to prove, but enough to know. And behind the glass, I heard it, breathing, not loud, not labored, just steady, like someone on the other side didn't know they were being listened to. I didn't brush my teeth that night. Instead, I went to the living room and sat with my phone, turned on the voice recorder. I wanted to capture the quiet, prove it wasn't quiet at all. I let it record while I walked the apartment, checked under the bed, in closets, behind curtains, nothing. 20 minutes later, I stopped the recording and hit play. For the first 8 minutes, there was nothing. Not even the usual hum of life, just flat, empty silence. But at 8:59, something shifted. A breath, a scrape. And then, my voice, not speaking clearly, just whispering. 3 words. Don't trust her. It was me, but it wasn't from that night. I hadn't said that, not out loud, not even in thought. It felt like an echo from a version of me I hadn't met yet. I checked the file's details. Created 2 days ago. I hadn't used the recorder in over a week. I tried deleting it. The app froze. I restarted the phone, still there. The next morning, it was gone. No trace, no file, no memory of it in my storage. The apartment grew colder after that. Not in temperature, in tone. Doors started closing softer, not slamming, just gently sealing themselves shut. The hallway drawer remained shut for 3 days straight. I checked it every night. Not because I wanted it open, but because I knew one day it would be, and I needed to know the moment it happened. On the 4th day, I woke up with the drawer key in my hand. I hadn't touched it. It was warm. That afternoon, I tried to call Harper again. Her number rang once, then went to voicemail. I left a message. Just my voice, soft and unsure. Hey, let me know you're okay, please. Just something simple. An hour later, I got a reply. Not a call, a text. I'm fine. She explained everything. I froze. She, who? I typed. What do you mean? No answer. Typing dots appeared, then vanished. That was 2 days ago. No more messages since. Now when I walk past mirrors, I don't look. Not because I'm afraid to see something unfamiliar, but because I'm afraid I'll see something too familiar, something that moves before I do. In the silence, it's grown thick, like fog. Every sound feels chosen, curated. The pipes hiss in patterns. The windows creak in pulses. The fridge now sighs like it's tired of holding in secrets. And I'm starting to feel like I'm the intruder here. One night, I turned off every light in the apartment, sat in the dark just to see what it would do. Nothing moved, nothing knocked, but the silence whispered. Not in words, not in voices, but in suggestion. It wanted me to stay. It didn't want me to fight. That's when I realized something had changed in me. I wasn't scared of her anymore. I was scared of what I'd let her become. Because maybe, just maybe, she hadn't taken my place. Maybe I had stepped into hers. And now we were trading. Quietly, memory for muscle, voice for echo, thought for gesture, one piece at a time. I left the lights off that night. And in the silence, something else moved when I breathed. By morning, the walls felt thinner, not physically, just emotionally, like they no longer filtered thought from echo. I kept quiet, just in case something on the other side was learning my rhythm. I avoided the bathroom mirror for most of the day. I used the hallway one instead, smaller, rounder, easier to ignore. I shaved without looking, brushed my teeth with the lights dimmed. But Tuesday night I couldn't avoid it. I flicked the switch and the light buzzed overhead, humming like it remembered something it didn't want to say out loud. I stood in front of the sink and faced myself. I looked normal, exhausted, eyes bruised from sleep I never let happen, jaw tight, breath shallow. But my reflection, it looked too composed, too ready. I tilted my head, so did it. I blinked, so did it. Everything felt correct. Until I reached for the light switch, and it didn't. In the glass, my hand stayed still, frozen, just for a second. But I saw it. I felt it. That cold stutter in time. Then it moved, caught up, a half second late, like it had been deciding whether to follow or not. I stood there, fingers still on the switch, eyes locked on myself. No, not myself. Not anymore. I shut the light, locked the door, and didn't return. That night, I covered every mirror in the apartment, bathroom, hallway, bedroom closet, even the screen on my phone. It wasn't fear, it was refusal. Whatever was watching me, mimicking me, had been practicing too long, and now it was better at being me than I was. At 3:02 a.m., I heard the bathroom door creak. I had locked it, I was sure. I checked twice. Still it opened. No footsteps, no glass breaking, just the subtle click of a handle giving up. I stayed in bed, not breathing. The hallway light flicked on. Not the bulb, the soft overhead strip that only turns on when you move beneath it. It cast a gentle glow across the floor, enough to silhouette something just standing there, still, facing the bedroom door, not knocking, not speaking, just waiting. It didn't stay long. Eventually, the light flicked off again, and the silence returned, heavier than before. By sunrise, the mirrors were uncovered. I hadn't done it. They lay neatly propped against walls, sheets folded beside them. My own neatness, the kind I used when guests were coming. The reflection in the hallway mirror smiled when I passed. I tried to ignore it, poured coffee, opened windows, let the air in. But everything felt rehearsed, like I wasn't the one performing. I started talking to myself, not out of panic, out of necessity. "If you're listening," I said once, standing in the kitchen, "then stop pretending. Just tell me what you want." Silence answered, but then my phone lit up. No buzz, no sound, just a blinking red dot in the voice memo app. I hadn't touched it. I opened the file. The recording was 31 seconds long. At first, nothing. Then a breath. Then my voice, calm, measured, familiar. "If I told you, you'd only resist. But you've already agreed. You're just slower at realizing it." The audio ended. I dropped the phone, backed into the corner, watched the screen flicker back to sleep. That phrase, "you're just slower at realizing it," echoed like something I'd written to myself once, but never read aloud, like something I'd buried deep, hoping it would stay lost. Later that night, I uncovered the bathroom mirror again. I stood in front of it, waited. I didn't move this time. Neither did it. We stared at each other, breathing in sync. Then, it smiled. My mouth didn't move. It smiled alone. Not wide, not cruel, just soft. Accepting. I shut the mirror cabinet door. Behind it, inside the cabinet, was a note, folded once, tucked neatly. My handwriting, but not my words. "You're nearly ready." I didn't remember writing it, but the paper was warm, like it had just left my hand. I locked the cabinet, taped it shut, closed the bathroom door behind me. I called Harper again, still no answer. I left a voicemail, didn't say much, just, "Tell me if you've seen me." No reply. Not that day, not the next. I stopped checking. My reflection still smiled on its own, now and then. Not always. Just often enough that I never forgot. And the delay? It hasn't come back. Now it moves before I do. Sometimes I test it, barely lift my hand or blink without warning, but the mirror always beats me to it. There's a strange sort of silence that comes after that, a private kind, like being watched by yourself. I used to find mirrors comforting, tools for brushing my hair, checking my teeth, straightening my collar. Now they feel like windows I was never meant to look through. I stopped talking to friends. I stopped calling Harper. It wasn't just fear. It was the slow, awful realization that I didn't trust what version of me they might hear on the other end. I needed some part of my life to stay mine, even if it was digital. So I opened my laptop, typed in the password, hit enter, incorrect. I tried again, slower, incorrect. The recovery prompt flashed. What was your childhood best friend's name? I smiled. Easy, Harper, incorrect. I blinked, tried her full name, then my second choice, then a nickname I used to call her. Still wrong. I moved to my email, logged out, tried to reset the password. A message popped up. This account no longer exists. That's when the cold settled in. I wasn't just locked out. I was deleted. I reached for my phone, pulled up the security app from my apartment cameras. It had been my one link to confirming what was real. The app opened, then logged out. When I tried to log back in, it said, "User not recognized." I stared at the screen, heart tight. There were no recovery options, no contact page, just a line at the bottom of the screen. Need help? Contact our support team. I dialed the number. A pleasant woman answered, "Thank you for calling. May I have your name?" I gave it. Pause. "Oh, you're the one who called to have your data erased?" My stomach dropped. "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did, yesterday. I remember because you were very specific. You asked us to forget you." Her voice softened. "You said you were sure." I didn't hang up. I just let the silence fill the line until she said, "Is there anything else I can help with today?" Then I ended the call. I sat there a long time, staring at nothing. My accounts, my cameras, my information. Gone. Wiped not by accident, but by request. My request. Someone had answered my security questions, reset my passwords, deleted my backups, and told the companies to erase my data. And they believed her, because she sounded like me. I checked my bank app, logged out, recovery failed. Every login attempt returned the same phrase. No user by that name, not wrong password, not try again later, just gone. I checked the electric bill portal, the water company, the postal redirection service, same thing every time. Your account has been deactivated. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The absurdity, the precision. This wasn't hacking. This was replacement. I didn't exist, but she did, and she had all my access now. It wasn't about control anymore. It was about memory, proof, the digital trail of who I was. It was being rewritten or removed, bit by bit, until nothing left would point to me. I walked to the window, looked out at the building across the street. Someone had taped a mirror to the outside of their fire escape. I could see my reflection in it. Only, I wasn't at the right angle. I turned my head slightly. The reflection didn't. It just stood there, looking back, calm, content. Like it had waited a long time to be left alone. I shut the blinds. I unplugged the router. I powered down every device. Still, the silence felt digital, like code humming beneath my walls. That night, I sat in bed with my birth certificate in my hands, the one I kept in the fireproof box beneath my dresser. My name was there, my birthday, my hospital, all correct. I flipped it over. A Post-it was stuck to the back, not my handwriting. It said, "This won't help you now." I didn't remember writing it, but it was in my house, on my document, in ink that hadn't dried fully. I placed the certificate back in the box, went to the mirror. I looked like me, still tired, still pale, still carrying the shape of myself. But I wasn't sure anymore what part of that reflection was mine. I smiled. It didn't. And when I whispered my name to the glass, it flinched. That's when I knew the boundary between us was breaking. It wasn't just mimicry anymore. It was hesitation, recognition, fear maybe, and not mine. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the floor of my living room, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. My breath shallow, chest heavy, like the air had thickened just enough to resist being inhaled. At 4:44 a.m., the hallway light flickered. No movement triggered it, no sound. It simply pulsed once, a warning, then died. I turned on my laptop. I had avoided the security camera app since being locked out. But last night, in a brief flicker of clarity, I remembered something. I had exported a copy of a week's worth of footage to an external drive a few weeks back. A backup. Paranoia disguised as preparedness. I plugged the drive in. The folder opened, camera export, Sunday to Tuesday. I clicked Sunday. The footage loaded, time-stamped and organized. I hit play. It showed my hallway. Still. Empty. Clean. I waited for my arrival. I remembered walking through the front door around 3 p.m. with groceries. I had a bruise on my shin from bumping the cart. I remembered how the bag tore and an apple rolled under the table. But on the feed, nothing. 3 p.m. passed, no door opened, no apple rolled, just stillness, like the apartment had no past, like it had never been lived in. I jumped ahead. 7 p.m., midnight, 2:30 a.m. The hallway remained silent, untouched. I opened Monday's file. Same thing. Empty. No trace of me walking, sitting, eating, showering. Only still frames of an apartment gently erasing its host. I felt something crumble inside me. A quiet sort of grief. But I kept watching. I needed to find myself. Prove I had been here. I clicked into Tuesday's folder. Most of it was the same. Empty living room, hallway shadows, no activity. I scrubbed forward, minute by minute. Then I saw it, timestamp, 2:41 a.m., a single frame. She was there, standing in the center of the living room, back facing the camera, still, arms by her sides. Her head tilted slightly, too slightly, as if listening to something behind the lens. I hit play. She didn't move. For almost a full minute, she stood there, frozen. Then, slowly, she turned toward the camera. Not all at once. Like something remembering how muscles worked. When her face came into view, I froze. It was mine, but softer, cleaner, more certain. She smiled, not like someone happy to see you, but like someone who had already won. Then the camera feed glitched. One frame of static. Then she was gone. Just an empty living room again. No door opened. No steps taken. Erased. I stared at the timestamp. Tuesday, 2:41 a.m. I had been asleep on the floor that night, only 10 feet from that spot. And I remembered dreaming of breathing. Not mine, not human, just close enough to convince me I was safe. I checked the rest of the footage. Every time I should have been home, I wasn't. No trace, no sound. But every so often she'd appear, just for a frame, a flicker, in the kitchen, by the bathroom door, standing behind my desk chair, watching, never interacting, never rushing, just observing, just learning. Like she was rehearsing for something permanent. I closed the laptop, walked to the hallway, stood in the exact spot where the frame showed her. I stayed there, waiting, listening. There was no reflection, no echo, but I could feel it, the weight of eyes that weren't visible. I picked up the mirror from the floor, the one I had taken down weeks ago, set it against the wall, stared into it, and waited. Then I whispered, "Why are you doing this?" Nothing answered. But I noticed something. My reflection wasn't breathing. Not anymore. It blinked, tilted its head, then smiled. Not mockingly, not cruelly, lovingly, like it wanted me to trust it, like it thought it was helping. I stepped back, sat down, and played the footage one more time. Paused on the moment she looked into the camera. I zoomed in. Her eyes didn't just meet the lens, they met me. It wasn't a security feed, it was a conversation. And I was the one who had been answering without knowing it. Behind the stillness of each frame, I saw it clearly now. She hadn't been visiting. She had been remembering.